Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're returning, thank you for coming back, and if you're new, welcome to the family. My name is Pearl. I post videos twice a week about nursing, medicine, faith, and lifestyle. So if you want to know more, then keep on watching. Today I'm going to begin a nursing series. I want to talk about tips and things to keep in mind when you're considering a career in nursing. I have 7 points, so let's begin. Number one, in order to be a good nurse, you have to be compassionate and empathetic. You have to love people. You have to be able to feel what they're feeling or put yourself in their shoes in order to provide the best care for them. Number two, you have to be flexible when going into nursing. You're not always going to get the same patients you had the previous shift. You're not going to have the same number of patients you had. Patients are distributed based on acuity, which is how sick they are, and the number of staff or nurses they have for that shift. So if they are short of nurses, unfortunately, you're going to be required to pick up more patients than usual. So keep that in mind. You also have to be flexible because you're not always going to have time to get your lunch break. You'll get so busy during your shift that you may miss out on your lunch. So remember that when choosing a career in nursing. Also be flexible with the length of your shift. I know you're hired for an 8-hour shift or a 12-hour shift, but that's not always the case. Sometimes you're required to stay an hour or two after the end of your shift. Let's say you have a new patient coming in the hospital few minutes before the end of your shift. You can't just pack up and leave because it's the end of your shift. You have to make sure that patient is stable and settled in, and then hand over to the upcoming nurse before leaving. Most of the times you may be too busy during your shift that you don't have enough time to complete your documentation. In such cases, you're going to do your report to the next nurse and then stay back to complete your documentation. There will be times when the oncoming nurse calls off or they call in late, or they're just short of staff and they haven't found another nurse to relieve you yet. Those times you're going to have to stay back and work longer hours than usual. Tip number 3, in order to go into nursing, you have to love people. You have to be a people person. You have to love the patients you're working with, and you have to be able to work with a team of other healthcare providers like doctors, physical therapists, case managers, you name it. So if you're not a people person, going into nursing is going to be very stressful for you. Tip number 4, going into nursing, you have to be humble. You cannot be full of yourself if you want to go into nursing. Healthcare is patient-centered. It's not about you, the nurses or the doctors, it's about the patient. So you have to put aside your wishes, your beliefs, your feelings sometimes when you're going into nursing. Regardless of your education in nursing, you can't feel that you know it all. You can't feel superior over others. Granted, you have a nursing education, but remember that what you learn in class is not necessarily what is being practiced. So be open to learn. Do not take it to heart when you make a mistake. Just learn from every situation you find yourself in. Also remember that patients know themselves more than you do, despite the fact that you have a nursing education. When a patient tells you something about themselves, you can't just dismiss it because it doesn't tie in with what you learned in class. So keep that in mind. Also be ready to get your hands dirty. Nursing is not a white collar job, so to say. Sometimes you'll be required to clean your patients, which sometimes you may not even have help to do because the aide is busy with another patient. You'll be required to heat up your patient's food or their family's food, get the patient water, a lot of other stuff that you may not think about when you think about a nurse. So you should be ready to do more than what a layman would think is a nurse's job. Tip number 5, do not go into nursing for the money. Nurses do a lot. They act as a middleman between the patient and the other care providers. Nurses sometimes act as the doctors, physical therapists, respiratory therapists, case managers, you name it. Nurses do a lot, both physically and mentally. And if you're going into nursing for the money, you find out that they do not get paid enough for all that they do. So you might get very frustrated, and that might affect your productivity because you're not satisfied with what you're doing. Also, to go into nursing, number 6, I think you need to be physically fit, especially if you want to work in an acute care setting like the hospital. You'll be required to move patients around, turn them in bed, or move them to and from a stretcher or a chair, which sometimes you may not always have help. So if you're not physically fit, that might be very challenging for you. Now, I'm not saying if you're not physically fit, you can't be a nurse. You can, but there's only so many places where you can work. You can work at a doctor's office where you're not required to do so much physical work. And number 7, you have to be prepared to work under stressful conditions. Nursing is very demanding, both physically, mentally, emotionally. And if you can deal with all that stress, again, it's going to affect your productivity, it's going to affect your patients, it's going to affect yourself, and maybe sometimes it may also affect your license. So keep all this in mind when considering a career in nursing. I hope these tips were helpful. Please like and share this video. If you have not subscribed, please subscribe to my channel and stay tuned for my next video. Thank you. Bye bye.